we have this point in the future where people look back, and everyone wants to understand, legacy and history and impact. Well, our kids, right? I mean, our grandkids. I mean, that's ITHAKA. That's Greece. That's Greek. That's Hellenic.
We could not imagine a more fitting beginning to the speaker series than our inaugural guest, Andrew N. Liveris. He's the former chairman and CEO of Dow Chemical, where he spent 42 years, a trusted advisor to major corporations, princes, and presidents, and co-founder and chairman of the Hellenic Initiative. He is also president of the 2032 Olympic Games in Brisbane, Australia, and just returned from the Olympic Games in Milan, Italy. He'll be talking today with George P. Stamas, a partner at the international law firm Gibbs & Dunn and co-founder and president of the Hellenic Initiative. This first episode will go behind the scenes of the Olympic Games, one of the world's most complex and inspiring global undertakings, while reflecting on leadership, legacy, and the values that guide meaningful impact. Please welcome Andrew Liveris and George Stamas.
Andrew, welcome to our inaugural ITHAKA journey, where we're celebrating at the Hellenic Initiative the journey of great Hellenes. You and I have been close friends for a long, long time, and we've had a chance to talk about our journeys. For everyone out there, and for the diaspora in particular, I think they'd be fascinated by the journey you've had. And it started where in Australia?
Yeah, as you said, we've been together, so this seems surreal. I feel like I should interview you, but anyway, let's stay with your question. And I'm happy this series is there as a role model for many young Hellenes and Hellenes on our mutual journeys. But yeah, Northern Australia, Darwin is a capital city of the northern part of Australia. That's where my grandfather landed on his fourth boat from Castellorizon. So he caught 4 boats, not by design, by accident. So by accident, he landed in the northern part of Australia.
Goodness.
It was like a population of 2,000 or 3,000, mostly miners and pioneers. And so he was a pioneer in northern Australia. Can you believe that? And he made his money in an abattoir because there was cattle, a lot of cattle. So used that money to go all the way back to Castellorizon, 4 boats, to pick up my grandmother and now my father, who he had never met. She was pregnant when he left.
Extraordinary.
And brought his 2-year-old son to Darwin, Northern Australia.
And at that point, then, you're living in Darwin.
Yep.
And you're in a strange place, let's say, probably still speaking Greek.
At home.
At home. And so it's an experience that so many around the world have experienced in our diaspora.
Yeah.
But Darwin, right?
Yeah.
I mean, extraordinary. And then from there.
Yeah. We're there to Brisbane, but the Greeks in Australia mostly went to Melbourne, in the big city in the south, Sydney and Perth/Fremantle. So Darwin, the very tight-knit Greek community, Castelresians and Calymnians from the Dodecanese. And they really worked from basic labor. And my father built the Northern Territory's largest construction business from that. But it got literally blown apart by a hurricane that wiped the town out in early 70s. And 50 people died. It was a horrible disaster. We got evacuated to Brisbane, where I went to finish my high school and did my university there and became a chemical engineer. So my mother's family were in Brisbane. They were from Rhodes. And so we went and joined them while everything got rebuilt back up in Darwin. So acts of nature interfered with my life story, yeah.
Well, maybe not so much of an accident. I mean, you had a mother and father and grandparents who clearly there's something in that DNA
absolutely
that inspired you,
inspired
them to inspire you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I try to imagine now. So what was it like? You're in Little Darwin, 2,000-3,000 people.
Yeah.
It's growing, but slowly.
Yeah.
You've got your visions on the great capitals of Australia, maybe the world. What was it? What was in your head, in your imagination? What was driving you and inspiring you, do you think?
Well, you mentioned the key point. I mean, that generation just worked so hard. I saw my father, literally a tradesman, self-trained. My grandfather died when he was 8, so he had to raise his 2 brothers and his dear mother. They relied on him. So he taught himself skills. So I looked at all that. I watched all that. I watched his brothers. I watched them, toil. I watched them say, education's everything. And this was the thing that drove me. I remember sitting in our balcony listening, we had no TV, listening the JFK speech, putting man on the moon. And then Man on the Moon, also didn't see it on TV because we only had radio at that point. And I said, this place called America, this must be amazing. And so I'm in Little Darwin, 20,000 at that point, and saying to myself, I want to get to America. Most Australians think the other way. They think they want to go to Britain because it's British colony. So I unusually took a tilt to the US very early because of these amazing people you'd hear on the radio, that was generationally for us affected us. Greece was this place that the parents came from. We spoke the language, but Greece never attached itself to the country. The church did. So we went to church, we did all the religious, ceremonies and all that. We felt Greek, but we felt Greeks in Australia. And that maybe is the story of Greeks everywhere. Our diaspora acclimatized to the local environment. And so I became very American-focused as a Greek growing up in Australia.
So you get your chemical engineering degree. Profound in and of itself, frankly.
Yeah.
Especially to someone like me who got a D in chemistry. But
I can help you with that.
And from there, you're interviewing for jobs. I mean, how did you find your way to a 41-year career at one company?
Yeah, never by design. Not so much bragging rights, but either through DNA or through hard work or maybe both. I still am seen as I got perfect scores in my chemical engineering degree. So I graduated with a university medal. So I literally had the world's companies coming to me saying, I'll give you a job, I'll give you a job, I'll give you a job. And so, I mean, my poor mother, who didn't understand what chemical engineering was, I'd lost my father at that point. I lost him early as well. So she was very proud of me. I was getting all these medals and blah, blah, blah. And she had this vision that I'd stay in the hometown, Brisbane at that point. And so Dow Chemical came along with the offer, not the highest money. The offer was, we'll take you overseas to America pretty quickly, and we'll show you the world. Now, 21 years old, I remember my American story. I said, that sounds good. I had offers from DuPont, ICI, Exxon, BP, Shell, all of them. And
names that you came across later on. I'd like to get to
Yeah, definitely DuPont in particular. So I got mentored by my university professor. He basically said to me, because they wanted me to do a PhD, and I said, maybe I should do that. I got offered a scholarship to Oxford to go do a PhD in science and engineering. And I said, maybe I should do that. And he said, no, go work first. And if you really want to do a PhD, you'll come back. Never did. So I went to Dow, and they transferred me pretty quickly overseas.
So how in that journey did you meet the love of your life?
Yeah, well, that came kind of in chapter 2, I guess, because I got shipped overseas as a single guy, went to Hong Kong, went to Louisiana, went back to Hong Kong, went to Korea in 7 years. So Dow moved me around. 7 years later, they said, we have this massive project in Australia. We'd like you to go and help build the Australian chemical industry for us. So I went back to Australia, and that's where I met Paula in Sydney. She was a girl from Broken Hill of Lebanese. Her mother's side is Lebanese. So, yeah, I mean,
Broken Hill is for the audience.
Literally, yeah. Australia's largest mining company is the world's largest mining company, BHP, Broken Hill Proprietary, from this town in the middle of Australia. Literally, when they found the mine 150 years ago, it was the silver, lead, and zinc was a mountain. It was glistening in the sun. So these prospectors didn't believe their luck. It's still being mined, but BHP these days is massive.
And so the family values that you had and she had,
yeah,
and now you've got your wonderful children.
Yeah.
Tell us about them.
Well, so Paul and I, obviously, we got married within a few years, had our first son in Australia. she was great because she said she saw me rising the ranks at Dow in Australia, and Dow wanted to move me overseas. I said, you have a problem with that? She said, no. I love being overseas. I love learning. She had lived in England for a while, so she knew about being global. So she and I decided that we would raise our kids internationally and have the adventures. She moved us 14 times in the 40-year career without a blink of an eye. She just did the work, raised the kids while I built my career. So the partnership to this very day, we're 43 years in the marriage. I mean, it's just been exactly that, a partnership. And she shared the same family values. And so we had one kid in Sydney, one kid in Hong Kong, and the third child, our son, girl, boy, in Bangkok. And so she tested the hospital systems pretty much. And then we raised them. The last 20-odd years were in Midland, Michigan, where I went back and got promoted to the CEO role.
So as you're climbing that greasy pole,
yeah.
One question for everyone is, you're of the diaspora.
Yes.
You're an Australian from the backcountry, effectively.
Yes, outback.
And outback. and how did that, do you think, did it add to the disadvantage you felt? Did you feel prejudice as you're coming through?
Yeah, we got called the names. It's funny growing up in an outback town in Australia because we had a disproportionate amount of Indigenous people, Aboriginals. And so there was the Aboriginals, and then there was the immigrants, belonged to that group, and then there were the WASPs. The immigrants were more associated with the Aboriginals than the WASPs. So I had a lot of Aboriginal friends. So we were called all the names, WOG, WAP, all those things. We had funny lunch boxes with funny foods in them, not Vegemite sandwiches, but dormothers and giftedders and all that. So that we were being criticized. But we all, us immigrants, the Greeks, Italians, Croats, all the Serbs, and we all hung together with the Aboriginals. And so I credit that to giving me a 180-degree perspective on diversity. I never looked at the color of people's skins as a problem. I saw it as an opportunity. And I think in general, and you've been around me long enough to know what I'm about to say, I'm an optimist. I don't see problems, I only see solutions. And I saw what they were going through, their terrible lives growing up as Australia's original culture. And when we get to Olympics, I'm going to make sure I remedy that, put them front and center as one of the most important parts of our country, Australia. But growing up in Darwin gave me that perspective that made me a different type of leader at Dow before my time.
Right.
So it wasn't wokeism, which is what the term is this day. It's inclusivity, where everyone's talents can come to the table. And look at me, Greek, Australian, from Castellarizon, growing to the top of a great global American corporation. If that's doable, anything's doable. So,
now, 41 years.
Yeah.
Not a straight line.
Nope.
Never is. And with its challenges. I remember 20 years ago a newspaper headline that Andrew Liveris could wrestle a crocodile, not just because he's from Australia, but he's seen a lot of crocodiles.
Definitely, yeah.
What do you think some of the challenges, the outward challenges were, do you think, that you experienced at Dow?
Well, I mean, the public companies, private companies, I mean, the pin of the needle where the CEO sits, chairman of the board, if the CEO and chairman's combined, is lonely. Everyone feeds you what they think they want you to hear and you want to hear, and this emperor wears no clothes thing. Once I hit that spot, and I was in that spot 15 years, it became very apparent to me, that I basically was going to be alone, and I had to go find places to learn, and to learn the first-hand information, especially in today's day and age, the facts that would then help me make decisions. Making no decisions, taking no risks is death. Most global companies, public companies, die because they don't take the risk. So how to take a managed risk, how to get the best advice on that managed risk, how to make sure that best advice was based on fact is what I learned pretty quickly, that stakeholders of all sorts from their spot have a vested interest in their spot. A government, a shareholder, an employee group, I mean, you name it. So my approach, and I went and benchmarked the best CEOs in the world, and they opened their door to me once I got announced. I went to see Jack Welch and Larry Bossidy and storied names in business, and took extensive notes as the young up-and-coming CEO from them on, tell me what you learned along the way. I still have that book of all those notes I took, and I refer to it many times. And fundamentally...
That's a book a lot of us would like to see.
Yeah, maybe my third book might have that, memoirs of some sort.
I wish you would.
Yeah, but what I learned is go to the front lines. Talk to the people doing it at the sales office, in the factory, the janitor, the warehouse operator, the people who are actually doing the work. Go to them, okay? By the time their information gets to you in the ivory tower, it's been filtered so many ways that whatever you get may or may not be true. So I did about 30 to 40 countries a year. I traveled like a banshee, I mean, if that's a term. 2/3 of the year I was on the road to listen and learn at the cold face of business, okay? And then I went to the capitals of the world, mostly Washington, to figure out how to deal with that stakeholder. I went to New York and other places to learn from the shareholder. I would go to them. I'd be omnipresent. That's why it's a tough job. The energy required to do that, and thank God maybe it was the Castellaros on DNA, I had the energy to do the job.
And you had, I assume, some existential risks along the way.
Definitely, massive crises.
One or two come to mind.
Oh, yeah, boardroom coup where the guy who lost out to me convinced one of the board members to convince the Sultanate of Oman to have a raid on our company shares, and rumors in the press, and we finally found out it was an internal guy working with a board member, so we had to get rid of them. We did. I'm going to do very brief versions of this. Buying my largest acquisition, and then 3 months later the world falls apart in the financial crisis. So Roman Haas, having the Kuwaitis help fund the deal, then back out at the last minute when there were no banks around. To this day, I very remember the 18 banks I went and saw on bended knee, and S&P and Moody's to try and keep us from junk rating. That crisis, that was a biggie. An activist, I mean, the activist world was around, so I had an activist come in and try and convince us to break up the company and blah, 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 blah. So just those three crises alone, and there's many others along the way. Never, ever lost sight of the goal. Never, ever wavered. Never, ever, ever showed I was afraid. Never, ever, ever did anything other than rally the troops and find the better place to land. That was a test of leadership that I wish every young person could listen to.
And your sense of duty to your shareholders, to the broader community,
all of them.
to the stakeholders, to Washington, D.C. I mean, the record is just amazing.
Yeah, well, but you had to work the relationships to this day, and you know this from our THI activity, relationships matter. So you've got to be loyal and you've got to show up.
Yeah.
You got to help a person when they're down, not when they're up. When they're up, fine. But when they're down, be the first to call. Really work so that people trust you, and never call the chit. Never call it. It's not a chit. It's actually trust. People will help you because they want to help you. And that, along the way, I use that to this very day.
I can't imagine anyone on this Ithaca journey very tempted to wonder exactly where your Ithaca is, but I think we've now come full circle, have we not?
Yes.
So how did you end up with the Olympics role that you had to head the Australian Olympics? How did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, if you'd asked me...
You're a natural, of course.
But, yeah, well, maybe someone saw that and maybe just made the offer, but I never saw it coming. And frankly, I think I love the way you phrased the question. It is a full circle. And maybe at the end of the day, at our lovely ages, which is, as we age gracefully in time here, and we think
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You're still, well, we're both young at heart.
No, I go to the gracefully part. Okay.
we have this point in the future where people look back, and everyone wants to understand, legacy and history and impact. Well, our kids, right? I mean, our grandkids. I mean, that's Ithaca. That's Greece. That's Greek. That's Hellenic. Other races too, but the Greeks and our value system. Number one. Two, what would they say about their papu? Okay, when I was here, what was it? Okay, I'd like to think that I showed and I had time for them, and as you know, I fight hard to make sure I have time with them. But doing an Olympics, okay. Having an event like the Olympics in Brisbane, Australia, where I went to school, my home country, being of Hellenic origin, the touch points were pretty high when they called me and said, would you do it? I actually originally said I have to think about it. Paula, My wife said, you do it. You do it. There's no one better suited for this than you. You can do it. Now, I'm not sure 3.5 years later whether she still wants me to do it because it's taking so much of my time. But I got to tell you, it's a labor of love because you see these young people. I just came back from Milano, and Cortina. Their sacrifices, their athleticism, but their personality. I mean, sports does bring something out into people. It brings the best of us. Not every sports hero, but many of them are our heroes and heroines. And so the Olympic movement was a natural. And so when the Prime Minister of Australia and the head of the International Olympic Committee, Thomas Bach at the time, called and said, we want you to do the Brisbane Olympics for 2032, I did my calculations. I said, that's 9.5 years away. I'll be this age. They said, no. We know you've got the energy. We've got the passion. You'll see it through. It's almost 4 years, George, and I'm loving it. I think it's like, as you say, a natural landing spot.
Well, it's natural also because in a 41-year career where you grew up with many who became CEOs around the world, a lot of the Olympics depends upon its corporate relationships.
Yep, totally.
And there's no one who can open doors like you and has the trust and confidence and loyalty that around the world. So I'm watching you as a whirling dervish, Australian phrase, as because you can't almost help yourself because every door you seek to knock on is opened for you for corporations all over the world, and that is fantastic for the Olympics.
In particular for an Australian Olympics, because as everyone probably knows, but Australia's 27 million people, so it's about the size of California, and so LA actually. So we don't actually have a big corporate population. So to raise $2 billion in my case, excuse me, is a big task, and I've got to find corporate sponsors of the domestic kind. Also, the IOC needs my help with the top sponsors. So I do have the relationships, and back to my earlier point, I haven't typically knocked on their door too often. So it's not like the case of, oh no, here he comes again. It's not that at all. I'm saying, so those 5 rings, see those Paralympics Agitos, how about your brand alongside that? How does that feel to you? So like that is not all that hard.
Well, the good news for THI is you have been willing to knock on doors since the day you and I went back to day one with the Hellenic initiative. Now, the Olympics, though, now is developing a certain high.
Yes.
There's a momentum.
Yes. That
seems very refreshing. How do you look at the Olympic ideals from Greece and bring them forward? I mean, what is the connectivity? What's the connecting tissue?
Well, our journey together on THI and our view to helping Greece by getting the diaspora mobilized on Hellenic values, 2011, 2012 circa timeframe, we go back to that moment in time and we see the journey Greece has been on. Post-Olympics, 2004, they raised a lot of money, a lot of debt, and then they cavitated their economy, percentage of debt to GDP at such extraordinary high levels, Grexit, all those terms being used. You and I rallied a lot of Hellenes and Hellenes. And, I guess personal journey-wise, back to Darwin, back to being raised Greek, it certainly was a fire in me that said, no, that's not right. That's not right. Not this country. Sure, it's 11 million people. Sure, it's not the powerhouse of some of the first world order, giant countries. It's not a Germany. It's not, no, it's the people. It's the people. Their resiliency, their ability to preserve Hellenic values and culture shouldn't be judged over a 10-year time frame. It should be judged over a 2,500-year time frame. And so how do we then take that journey, and then you look at brands around the world and say, who's sustained their brands through 100 years, 150 years, forget 2,500 years? Some corporates like a Dow, but the Olympic movement, since Pierre Coubertin founded it in 1897, modern Olympics, with the inaugural games in Athens. And by the way, I visited his partial gravesite in Olympia recently.
Fantastic.
And you want to talk about, emotional, goosebumpy moment, the home of it all. You saw the original tracks, and so his vision and the IOC and their values, stronger, higher, better, together. I mean, these things resonate for countries. We've just recently released the Brisbane vision, and it's also got a goosebumpy feeling to it. It's modern. Believe, belong, become. In those 3 words, we're evoking passions and motivations to inspire people for a generation or two. And so marrying Olympic ideals, the original Olympia ideals, the Greek ideals, the Hellenic ideals, the Olympic ideals, our Brisbane 32 values, for me, this is what young people want. And frankly, that is an ITHAKA, that journey, that no matter if, boardroom coups, geopolitical events of the most destructive kind, wars, all of that, what sustains through all that? What keeps it all going? I think Hellenism is one of those things that keep people going, and we've got to get that story out there, for sure with the diaspora, but beyond that.
And so in your hometown,
Yeah.
Bringing the Olympics there, it'll have a lasting influence on
Yes.
that community as well.
Yeah, yes.
And how do you compare and contrast what you're trying to do with some of the previous Olympic sites that you've seen? What lessons are to be learned from that?
I think the evolution of the Olympic movement under Thomas Bach and now Kirsty Coventry has recognized it can't be a 4-week event. Come, go, and then in some cases like Greece, debilitate the economy.
Yeah.
It's moved on dramatically, and our version of the Olympics is I think Paris did a great job. Milan Cortina's doing a good one right now.
Yes.
Los Angeles soon. Brisbane will be the first games that has the word legacy written all over it. That pre the games and post the games, you mentioned community. The community will be better off for having hosted these world events. And better off means venues and infrastructure and systems, but also pride and reputation and a feeling of goodwill that permeates, okay? I mean, just coming back from Milan Cortina, we love Italy, right? Una fazza, una razza. But you should see the Italian community. They're coming out in droves.
Right.
Same with the French in Paris 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. That will be what we'll have as a lasting, for young people in particular, impression of having us host the games.
So this extraordinary journey, your Ithaca, Odysseus returned to his island. You are metaphorically and physically returning to yours.
Yes.
But you're still a man of the world, and I would say the modern communication and internet and all of that has given you an opportunity to influence not just your hometown, but to influence the Hellenic Initiative and all of us of the diaspora.
Right.
And for that, Andrew, from my heart, it means everything as you let me get on a journey with you together.
Other way around.
I don't think
we
so.
We mutually beneficially let each other become really best of friends.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, George.